There are certain people you never expect to lose, not because they're invincible, but because their presence is so woven into your life, so quiet and constant, that the idea of absence feels impossible. For Nora, that person had always been Callum. They met before they could spell their own names, neighbors in a sleepy coastal town, two shadows running between backyard fences, collecting seashells like currency and swearing oaths of eternal friendship with scraped knees and sand-filled shoes. He was the boy who always waited for her at the school gate. The one who taught her how to climb trees and how to curse in code. The one who showed up with her favorite licorice when her mother was late again, and sat beside her during thunderstorms without saying a word. By the time they turned 16, there were stories everyone else could see but they still refused to name, glances that lasted too long, silences that carried more than words ever could. But nothing was said. Not yet. And then, one morning, he was gone. No letter. No phone call. No goodbye. His house emptied overnight. The windows dark. The mailbox sealed. She waited. A week. Then a month. Then a year. The ache dulled, eventually. Not because it faded, but because she learned to carry it like a stone, heavy, but familiar. She moved on, or at least convinced everyone she had. She studied literature. Worked at a small press. Lived alone, surrounded by paper and silence. But every so often, when a certain kind of rain fell, or when a boy said her name in a certain rhythm, her heart would trip, wondering, for a breath, if it was him. It never was. Until one Saturday in late October, when she walked into the bookstore near the corner of her street, and there he was. Callum. Older. Broader. His hair longer, streaked with a touch of silver. But the same eyes. The same posture. The same impossibly familiar stillness that once tethered her to the ground. He didn't see her at first. He was talking to someone, a woman, tall and elegant, who held his arm lightly and laughed at something he said. And then Nora noticed the ring on the woman's hand. And the way she leaned in when she spoke. And the way Callum smiled, softly, a smile Nora hadn't seen in nearly a decade. The ache, long settled like sediment in her bones, broke loose all at once. She turned around. Left the store. Didn't say a word. Because some stories don't restart with a hello. Sometimes, they begin again with silence. And the impossible task of deciding whether the past still belongs to you. When the person who wrote it now belongs to someone else. Nora didn't tell anyone she'd seen him. Not her sister, not her coworker who still believed in destiny, not even the friend who once tried to set her up with someone who looked nothing like Callum, but made her laugh, once. She told herself it was better this way. Cleaner. Less foolish. But every night that followed, she found herself staring at the ceiling long after the lights were out, replaying those few seconds like a scene on loop, the way his hand rested lightly on the woman's back, the angle of his smile, the ring, the absence of her name on his lips. There had been no recognition. No flicker of the boy who once swore to never leave. And yet, there had been a weight in her chest that didn't feel like surprise. It felt like remembering. 2 weeks passed. She returned to the bookstore eventually, not because she hoped to see him, she insisted, but because she needed ink and silence and a place where the world didn't press in too close. She was thumbing through a poetry collection when a voice behind her, quiet and careful, said her name. Nora. She didn't turn immediately. Her fingers froze on the page, but her heart did something worse, it began to race as if no time had passed at all. When she finally looked up, he was standing there, hands in his coat pockets, that same uncertain posture she remembered from when they were 17 and didn't know what to do with their hearts. "Hi," he said, like it was the only word that still worked. She wanted to be colder. Sharper. She wanted to ask 100 questions, or none at all. Instead, she just nodded. Hey. Silence stretched between them, taut and trembling, until he finally spoke. I didn't know how to find you. She almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was tragic in a way only time can be. You didn't try. He didn't deny it. And that, somehow, hurt more. They sat down in the corner of the bookstore cafe, like it was still theirs. And in the quiet that followed, the truth began to spill, not all at once, but in pieces. Hesitant. Earnest. Worn. His family had left in a rush, a financial collapse, a father's shame, a mother's fear of gossip. He'd been 17, scared, and angry. He hadn't written not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how to explain that the life he left behind felt like something he no longer had the right to claim. And now, she asked, the words barely above a whisper. He paused. Then glanced at the ring on his finger, not on his own hand, but hers. The woman from that day. Fiancé. Partner. Future. Now, I still don't know what I deserve. There was something in his voice that broke her, not because it begged for pity, but because it sounded so much like the boy who once held her hand under fireworks and asked if she thought stars ever missed the places they used to be. She wanted to ask him if he was happy. She wanted to ask why he was here now. She wanted to ask if she was a mistake he couldn't stop remembering. But instead, she said the only thing she truly meant. You mattered. And when you left, you took something I didn't know I needed until it was already gone. He nodded. And for the first time, she saw it, regret, raw and unapologetic, not masked by silence or time. He stood slowly, almost like it hurt to leave. I don't expect anything, he said. I just couldn't leave again without saying something real. Nora didn't stop him. She didn't follow. She just sat there, letting the weight of old grief and new clarity settle in the space he left behind. And for the first time in years, she felt still, not empty, not angry. Just still. Because not every story ends with someone staying. Some stories end with someone finally telling the truth, and walking away. And sometimes, that's the only closure we ever get. Not in reunion. But in honesty. Not in love reclaimed. But in love finally named. And left where it always belonged. In the past.